Can an airline once banned for a serious safety scandal return to international skies and regain the trust it lost? After 5 years of being grounded due to a crisis of trust and the fake pilot license scandal, PIA, also known as Pakistan International Airlines, has finally been granted the green light to resume flights to the UK, a market that was once a goldmine for the carrier. The British government has officially lifted the ban imposed since 2020, marking a major turning point in PIA's revival and opening strategic opportunities for Islamabad's ambitious privatization plan. But behind this landmark decision lies a long and arduous reform journey, a sensitive political and economic context, and a series of unanswered questions. Is PIA truly capable of operating under international standards? Is this return a real recovery boost, or just a temporary energy shot before the airline faces its bigger challenge, privatization, for survival? The British government has officially lifted a 5-year ban on Pakistani airlines, allowing them to apply for permission to resume flights to and from the United Kingdom. This is a significant milestone not only in reviving PIA's international flight network, but also in supporting the privatization process of the heavily indebted national airline. The initial ban was imposed in June 2020 following a serious crash in Karachi that killed 98 people. The accident sparked fierce criticism after Pakistani authorities admitted that nearly 1/3 of active pilots held questionable or invalid licenses. This led to PIA being banned not only from flying to the UK but also to EU countries and the United States. In recent years, however, Pakistan has made significant reforms in the aviation sector, including restructuring the Pakistan Civil Aviation Authority, enhancing pilot training and testing standards, and modernizing flight safety systems. As a result, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency lifted its ban on PIA in early 2025, and flights to Europe resumed in January 2025. According to the British High Commission in Islamabad, the UK Aviation Safety Committee conducted an independent and in-depth technical assessment, working closely with Pakistani agencies before making the decision to remove Pakistan from the UK air safety list. The official statement read, "Based on this independent and technical process, we have decided to remove Pakistan and its airlines from the UK air safety list." British High Commissioner Jane Marriott added that this was the result of a long and effective process between the two sides and described the move as a testament to Pakistan's genuine commitment to reform. However, the lifting of the ban does not mean that flights will resume immediately. According to the UK Civil Aviation Authority, each airline must still submit a licensing application, ensuring full compliance with operational, technical safety, and air traffic management standards before being allowed to resume commercial operations in the UK. From Pakistan's side, the government hopes that restoring routes to the UK and Europe will increase PIA's brand value as the airline prepares for a major privatization process. In July 2025, Pakistan approved 4 potential investors to enter the final bidding round, with expectations to complete the sale of 51 to 100% of shares by the end of the year. The move from the UK is seen as a positive signal for the Pakistani community in the UK, which numbers over 1.6 million, and a strategic opportunity for PIA to reclaim market share on long-haul routes that were once highly profitable, especially London, Manchester, and Birmingham. The UK's move came just months after the EASA lifted a 4-year ban on PIA, paving the way for the airline to resume flights to Europe starting January 2025. The previous ban was imposed in July 2020 after EASA found serious deficiencies in Pakistan's aviation safety oversight capabilities, particularly in the process of issuing flight licenses to pilots. The issue was triggered by a statement from then Pakistani Aviation Minister Ghulam Sarwar Khan, who claimed that more than 260 active Pakistani pilots were not professionally qualified. Since then, PIA was barred from operating any flights into European airspace, forcing the airline to cancel or transfer major revenue-generating routes. According to statistics, PIA suffered annual losses of over 40 billion rupees, or nearly $144 million, due to losing flight rights to Europe and the UK. However, after a series of comprehensive reforms within the PCA, including re-verification of all pilot licenses and strengthening independent safety oversight, EASA conducted several rounds of inspection and ultimately decided to lift the ban in December 2024. From January 2025, PIA officially resumed commercial flights to Europe, initially operating routes from Islamabad to Oslo, Copenhagen, and Milan, and is currently expanding to major cities such as Frankfurt and Paris. The successive lifting of restrictions by both the EU and the UK is seen as a strong boost for PIA during its restructuring phase and efforts to attract investment. Experts note that this not only helps restore the global image of Pakistan's aviation sector, but also increases the appeal of PIA in the privatization process, especially as the airline holds operating rights at several major airports across Europe, an asset highly valued by potential investors. Shortly after the UK announced its decision to lift the ban, Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif welcomed it and called it a significant milestone for the country. In his official statement, he emphasized that the UK lifting the ban on Pakistan's flights is a great relief for the Pakistani community residing in the United Kingdom. With more than 1.6 million Pakistanis living in the UK, the resumption of direct flights not only provides travel convenience, but also strengthens the human and trade ties between the two countries. Defense Minister Khawaja Mohammad Asif, who is currently playing an active role in overseeing PIA's privatization, also praised the UK's decision as a crucial boost to PIA's brand and commercial value ahead of the share sale. He said that plans to reopen the New York route, which PIA operated until 2017, are being actively pursued again thanks to positive signals from major markets. Notably, Mr. Asif also harshly criticized former Aviation Minister Ghulam Sarwar Khan, who made the explosive claim in 2020 that more than 260 Pakistani pilots held invalid licenses. That statement, issued shortly after the Karachi crash, severely damaged the global credibility of Pakistan's aviation sector and led to a series of flight bans from the EU, UK, and US. Those baseless statements cost the country its international trust. It was a national-level mistake, Mr. Asif said at a press conference on Wednesday. Many observers believe Mr. Asif's remarks reflect the current government's effort to clearly distance itself from the previous administration, while reaffirming its commitment to reform and transparency in the aviation sector, a key factor in attracting investors to PIA. PIA was banned from flying to the UK in June 2020 after a serious crash in Karachi that killed 98 people. According to the investigation report, the main causes were pilot error and air traffic control failure, in which 2 pilots failed to follow landing procedures and did not respond promptly to warnings. In addition, another serious issue was uncovered. About 262 out of 860 pilots in Pakistan were suspected of holding fake or substandard licenses. Pakistan's then Aviation Minister Ghulam Sarwar Khan admitted that up to 30% of the country's pilots were not actually in control during flights, which led to the global collapse of trust in Pakistan's aviation sector. These shocking revelations prompted a wave of bans from countries including the UK and European nations, citing safety concerns. PIA is still in a severely difficult phase. With around 7,000 employees, the airline has long been criticized for its bloated structure, poor management, and frequent issues with finances, safety, and regulatory compliance. A recent report from the Pakistani government shows that PIA is burdened with debts of over 742 billion rupees, nearly $2.7 billion, while its assets are insufficient to cover the liabilities. The 4-year ban on flights to Europe and the UK caused estimated annual revenue losses of around 40 billion rupees, or $144 million. This was especially due to the loss of access to lucrative routes to London, Manchester, and Birmingham. these are locations with large Pakistani communities where PIA held valuable landing slots at Heathrow Airport. Against this backdrop, the Pakistani government is pushing ahead with a plan to privatize PIA by the end of 2024, aiming to reduce costs, improve operational efficiency, and attract strategic investment from the private sector or foreign investors. However, as the door to international skies reopens for Pakistani airlines, on the ground, the space for free expression at home is facing a backlash. Just days after the positive signal from the UK, a court in Pakistan ordered a ban on 27 YouTube channels, citing the spread of misinformation and defamation of the judiciary. On June 24th, a lower court in the capital Islamabad ordered YouTube, the video platform owned by Alphabet, to block access in Pakistan to 27 YouTube channels, accusing them of threatening public order. The decision followed a report submitted to the court by the National Cybercrime Investigation Agency (NCCIA), listing channels that allegedly spread content deemed inciting, defamatory, and damaging to the reputation of state institutions and government officials. The list includes several influential media personalities such as Asad Ali Toor, Imran Riaz Khan, Matiullah Jan, and Habib Akram, known for regularly posting content critical of the government and particularly the Pakistani military. Some channels are also reportedly linked to former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his party PTI, a political force once in power and now in strong opposition to the current administration. The court ruling instructed authorities to ensure these channels are blocked from within Pakistani territory. At the same time, the ruling called on the government to establish tighter control mechanisms over cross-border digital platforms like YouTube to prevent actions that could destabilize the country's political and security situation. However, the move has sparked criticism from human rights and press freedom advocates. Organizations such as the Committee to Protect Journalists, CPJ, and Amnesty International have warned that using national security as a reason to block political content or opposing voices constitutes a violation of freedom of expression and goes against international commitments that Pakistan has signed. Some journalists whose channels were targeted also responded strongly on other platforms, arguing that this is an attempt to silence the press in a politically sensitive climate. The situation has become even more complicated as Pakistan enters a period of post-election political tension, with escalating confrontations between the ruling party and the opposition. In this context, controlling online information, particularly critical content, is becoming a new battleground between the government and dissenting voices. Amid pressure from the Pakistani court ruling, YouTube, the platform owned by Alphabet, has officially responded. The platform sent direct warnings to content creators listed among the 27 channels accused of threatening the state, urging them to promptly remove violating videos if they wish to keep their channels accessible in Pakistan. In the message to creators, YouTube stated, "If you do not comply under local legal obligations, we may enforce the request without further notice." This warning paves the way for YouTube to unilaterally block or delete the targeted channels in Pakistan if creators do not cooperate, signaling that the platform is trying to strike a balance between its commitment to freedom of expression and its obligation to comply with local laws. Meanwhile, Pakistani authorities are escalating their crackdown. Interior Minister Talal Chaudhry declared that individuals operating the listed channels could face criminal prosecution for using social media to incite, disrupt, and threaten public order. He stressed that the government would not tolerate the use of digital media as a tool to undermine national security. This development has raised deep concerns over tightening restrictions on free speech in Pakistan, where journalists and digital media have long faced pressure from the state and military. The targeting of prominent journalists like Asad Ali Toor, Imran Riaz Khan, and Matiullah Jan, all known critics of the government, has further intensified tensions between the state and the independent press. Several international human rights organizations have expressed alarm, warning that this could mark a serious setback for press freedom and access to information in the South Asian country. Following the ban and YouTube's warning, a strong wave of protest erupted from independent journalists and civil society groups, both inside and outside Pakistan. They accuse the government of exploiting the guise of national security to silence dissenting voices, suppress press freedom, and threaten democratic principles. Journalist Asad Ali Tour, one of those listed with a YouTube channel followed by over 333,000 people, responded bluntly, "This is not just about me, it's about the platform I've built for the oppressed, for the marginalized voices pushing back against state repression." Tour emphasized that he does not merely engage in personal media work, but creates a space for Pakistan's sidelined groups to speak out. He called this latest move a warning bell for anyone who dares to challenge those in power. The Human Rights Commission of Pakistan, HRCP, a respected advocacy group, also strongly condemned the government's action. In an official statement, the HRCP said the sweeping nature of the ban equates dissent with criminality and sets a dangerous precedent that could be abused by authorities to control the online space and stifle societal criticism. Blocking entire channels instead of addressing specific content oversteps legal boundaries. This is no longer law enforcement, it is political punishment, the HRCP stated. International organizations such as Amnesty International and the CPJ have also called on Pakistan to reverse its blanket censorship measures. They urged tech platforms like YouTube to act transparently and defend the legitimate rights of independent content creators, especially in countries where the media environment is tightly controlled. These developments have pushed Pakistan to a new threshold of confrontation between political power and freedom of expression, a battle growing increasingly fierce in the digital media era. The latest ban is part of a broader trend of increasing internet restrictions in Pakistan. In recent years, particularly since 2022, the government has repeatedly imposed access restrictions on platforms like X, Facebook, and TikTok, especially during times of protests or political unrest. In January 2025, Pakistan's parliament passed an amendment to the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, or PECA, allowing the establishment of an independent censorship body with harsh punitive powers. These include prison terms of up to 3 years and fines reaching 2 million rupees, equivalent to about $7,200 for actions deemed to spread false information or harm national interests. The current situation raises major questions about where the line lies between censorship in the name of national security and citizens' right to free expression. As international platforms like YouTube are compelled to comply with domestic legal orders, dissenting voices, particularly among journalists, face the real risk of being silenced altogether. However, on July 11th, a higher court in Pakistan issued a ruling to temporarily suspend the ban on 11 YouTube channels, stating that the lower court lacked the jurisdiction to issue such an order and that the parties involved, including the content creators, had not been given sufficient opportunity to defend themselves. A follow-up hearing is scheduled for July 21st, which is seen as a critical test for judicial independence and a key moment for civil society and free speech advocates to challenge the legitimacy of the censorship measures. The suspension has been welcomed by many international human rights organizations and independent journalists. They worry that forced content removals and channel bans could be abused to suppress critical voices. These concerns are especially relevant amid growing fears over human rights violations and electoral manipulation in the country. The ban on the 11 YouTube channels is not merely an isolated administrative decision, but part of a broader power struggle between Pakistan's civilian government, military establishment, and global tech platforms over control of information. As traditional media grows increasingly cautious or tightly regulated, platforms like YouTube, Facebook, and X have emerged as vital forums for the public to access diverse perspectives, including coverage of corruption, political violence, and military operations. Many observers argue that the current censorship measures go beyond targeting fake news or extremist content and reflect a long-term strategy to shape and dominate the flow of information in society. Tech platforms, particularly YouTube, are becoming the new battleground where freedom of expression, political interests, and state intervention collide head-on. Zulfikar Bukhari, Spokesperson for the opposition PTI party remarked, "This is not just about banning YouTube channels. It's about what they don't want people and the world to see, the truth and the human rights violations." His statement continues to draw international attention, particularly as organizations like Human Rights Watch and the CPJ closely monitor developments in Pakistan, warning of a shrinking democratic space and growing threats to press freedom. Once labeled unsafe, PIA is attempting a comeback, not only through resumed commercial flights but also by rebuilding trust with investors and the international public. The lifting of flight bans by the UK and EU marks a significant milestone. However, it comes at a time when Pakistan is also tightening control over the media landscape, including the latest court-backed ban on 27 YouTube channels. This raises critical questions about transparency and freedom of expression, both of which directly impact the country's investment climate and PIA's privatization efforts. The national carrier's return is therefore not just a technical aviation challenge, it is a test of Pakistan's capacity for reform and consistency in upholding its international commitments. Whether PIA can truly take off again depends not just on its wings, but on the political climate in which it is allowed to fly.